Welcome to A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm your host, Eric P. Bishop. This is a podcast where interesting people come and tell about the stories they've crafted. As for myself, I'm an author. I've created novels, short stories, novellas, and even poetry. If you'd like to find out more about what I've done, please go to my website, ericpbishop.com. Thanks, and enjoy the journey. Welcome back to another episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. Tonight I have Will Brink on the podcast, and this is the second time I get to introduce Will because we had all this technology issue and we lost the first 10 minutes. But hey, we're back. Hi, Will, again.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing
Good to be
well.
back a second time.
Yeah.
Hopefully this electronics always go bad at the worst possible time. So
The government apparently did not like something that was said in those first few minutes and they decided to silence us. So we'll take that as an omen. So
I wish that was as funny as it should be, but you just these days, I'm telling you, maybe I'm getting paranoid in my old age, but it does seem there are some amazing coincidences when things seem to want to shut off or whatever, and uh, they are definitely watching, and they are definitely watching, and recording just about everything you do.
yeah, no, I don't think there's any coincidences anymore. I think these nice phones and technology and everything we have and these
Yeah.
supercomputers and geez, just everything out there. It's an interesting time to be alive as well
Mhm.
as a scary time to be alive.
Yep.
You know,
It's not a dull moment.
no, there's really not. And it
Not
just
boring. Say that.
it seems like on a not daily basis, maybe you could take it to be a daily basis, but on a regular basis, we're going from one dumpster fire to another.
Yep.
And I think and I'd like to talk about this, especially with your health background, and some of the stuff that you've written about. I think it's doing us more harm than good in the sense of we're constantly always on edge, waiting for the next shoe to drop, and that's not a healthy way to live your life. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're sort of forward falling panic,
Yeah.
always. And yeah, it's definitely bad for you. It raises cortisol levels. It raises blood pressure.
Hmm.
It raises your heart rate. And stress. Interesting about stress is that chronic stress is what does harm to you. The
Hmm.
acute stress. I mean, you look at the guys let's say what some guy went through in Iwo Jima or something. Talk about stress.
Yeah.
Guys that was on D-Day, right? And yet they lived to 95 years old,
Right.
or 98 years old. It's that type of super high acute stress doesn't seem to be that harmful. It's that chronic
Hmm.
stress that goes on day after day, year after year that will do you in. But the acute, like I said, that acute stress that's short lived for a specific event doesn't seem to be that harmful. Certainly by the number of people, like I say, that have been through most horrific events that are 95 and 100 years old.
Yeah. I lived it in a small way, and I don't, try not to blow it out of proportion, but when I even the couple years before separating and then getting separated and then going through the divorce process, I probably had a 3 year span there where, man, I was just constantly on edge, constantly waiting for, that proverbial knife to come into my back. And
All right.
once my life
Prover-
changed, once things settled
Proverbial
down.
or literal?
What's that?
You said proverbial or literal, considering the divorce.
We'll hope proverbial. And
Yeah.
we'll hope it wasn't literal. I don't have any. I might have gone to sleep with
Scars.
Kevlar a few times just to make
All right.
sure, but no, I'm kidding.
I've heard some stories. I'm just saying.
Some people have lived through some amazing experiences. Fortunately, I was not one of them, but I know that just speaking of constantly being
Yeah.
under stress, and for me, it wasn't until everything was settled, the court stuff was taken care of, and I knew what my next steps were in life. I knew when I'd see my kids. I knew what the financial repercussions were for a while, and I've said this on other podcasts. I had about a year and a half span that I really didn't write anything. And what I did
Mm.
write, I didn't keep because I was just in such a poor mental headspace.
Yeah.
So once I,
Stress kills your creativity. All
yeah,
creativity comes to a halt when you're stressed out. You're in survival mode,
right.
so your body again and your mind is thinking about survival. And one minute to the next, you're not going to free up any creativity. I can't write at all when I'm stressed. Nothing
Yeah.
comes to me. That's just nothing there. I just have nothing. And
Yeah.
it's
For
but
me,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
as soon as things finalized, I think I knocked 30,000 words out that first month after on a new book because I had all this
yeah. relief.
you know,
Yeah.
spent up
Re
frustration and all this other.
release and well, you had a closure, you had some closure as to
Right.
what the next steps were. So you had some relief there, sort of release and then some release into sit down and writing something. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think that I think when you're having those lack of creativity moments, you can have to you sort of have to think of what is stressing me, what is
Yeah.
bothering me. Something's going on there. This is why I'm not able to look down at that computer and nothing's coming, you know. And usually, if I do that, it helps because I will find something that it's like, okay, that's bothering me. That's in the back of my
Mhm.
head, trickling along in there. And it doesn't take much, as you know, to shut off that creative process and you gotta creativity definitely is definitely not something that comes forward when you're stressing about something. And it
Mhm.
can be small stuff, can be doesn't have to be always big stuff, but yeah, anything like or it's just something you got in the back of your head you got to do all day, well, I'm going to write some stuff and at this time I've got to go, pick up my dog or whatever. But then it's at least for me in the back of my head, the dog thing is now stressing me out because I'm thinking about that, so I mean, and maybe that's just an excuse not to write. I don't know. Maybe I'm just using that as my excuse to like not do it. But I at least personally found that any stress, especially that kind of low level chronic stress, and I think that as you were saying, what we are living in every day is low level chronic stress going on because of just all the madness in the world, and there is no um, point in your day where there isn't something filtering through your mind or whatever we're worrying about. And I think you have to really you have to make time for it. You have to then take time, make time for getting this out of your, whether it's going to the gym, whether
Mhm.
it's meditating, whether it's, taking a walk in the woods, but you have to, I think you just, have to put aside 30 minutes or something to break that cycle of it because these days there's just, you can't leave your house. You can't get online or anything without being bombarded with something stressful,
Yeah. 100%.
just like I say, can't watch the news. You can't do it. You really can't do anything without being. So I think that low level chronic stress is just sort of simmering there all day, and it has been for at least 4 or 5 years. I mean, all of COVID was that way, right? I mean, you were
Yeah.
just always low level stress with this COVID thing, and
Right.
that's not really gone away. So call that 3 years right there.
Mhm.
That was very tiring. I mean, I think people collectively are exhausted from that, and I think there's a collective PTSD that we're all kind of working from. I don't think you realize how tiring that was.
Yeah.
And I think there is a sort of and it's not gone, and it's not gone yet either. I mean, it's still, at least informationally, we're still hearing about it, debating about it,
Yeah.
fighting about it. I'm, part of my sort of my job, at least as a scientist and someone who has to write about and talk about health related stuff. I've got to keep up on this stuff. So I'm watching videos of hearings. I was watching a video today of a hearing between Rand Paul and Fauci, and who's
Mhm.
calling each other names, and that's stressful. That was stressing me out,
Right.
and because they're you got two guys that are button heads, and is there going to be so the stuff that I sometimes have to read or watch is modestly stressful because I'm trying to know the answer for myself, but I also need to know these answers for writing these things. I do have to do research on things like long COVID. There's millions of people now with long COVID,
Mhm.
and I'm always trying to be up on what is the latest and greatest possible treatments, both traditional and non-traditional type things.
Yeah.
And it gets you're reading about things that are not that pleasant, really,
Right.
viruses, and your mind kind of drifts off to things that annoy you, like lab leak theory versus not. So I think we're all, like I say, I think we're just bathed. I think right now we have for a few years been just bathed in this amorphous stress,
Yeah.
chronic stress that just kind of hangs over things. And I think they ask people are more stressed. I mean, in general, and I think you see people acting out. I mean, look at again. I think people are acting out. People are breaking and doing stupid, doing dumb, some terrible things, but some just dumb things. I feel it when I'm driving and stuff that people are just more, tense and looking for a problem. I try to drive
Road
as little as I
rage.
pop. Yeah, I'm trying to drive as little as I can these days. I just feel the energy, that people are just very tense, and I think they're looking over at you like, like Brandon voter, Trumper, like they're already like that closely yelling at you about that.
Right. Yeah, it's such a divisive time. I mean, I do, I'm 47. I remember voting the first time I did. I remember the presidential elections, and I remember there was plenty of dirty things thrown around, but I don't
Yeah.
remember a time in my lifetime where it's been so, boy, if you're for Biden, you're the enemy. If you're for Trump, you're the enemy. The way people come at it now, and besides, we're in election year, so okay, we got through the majority, maybe you could say, of COVID, and then now we're gearing up for an election year that almost every major poll out there says the majority of Americans don't want either of those candidates to be running for president.
Yep.
Here
Yeah.
we
Oh yeah.
are. We got
Yeah.
them
Yeah. The majority of people. Yeah.
on both sides.
Either side, both sides.
Yeah,
And it's really what it's going to come down to is anybody but vote. That you get the one side are anybody but Trump voters. The other
right.
side is anybody but Brandon voters. And
Yep.
that's what we're down to. It's making people, and and I think this is by design. I think they're doing this is an intention by design of the media,
Hmm.
politicians getting us, what I like to call faux outrage, get us all outraged about nonsense.
Right.
But I think this is by design, and somewhat intentional to keep people from really looking at the bigger questions and things they should probably be looking at.
Yeah.
Like you know like who did they hide COVID? Did they know more than they told us about COVID?
Right.
Where did it come from? Why are we sending billions and billions to some other country when we got homeless vets?
Hmm.
I think there's bigger questions that they intentionally really don't want us to look at, and
Yeah.
so you can keep people distracted by playing this. I mean, I think the
Gotcha game,
yeah,
basically.
the gotcha game, but I think the term that's going around these days is they're just calling them the uniparty because they're the same. In a sense, they're both one and the same, in that
One
sense.
snake. The snake just happens to have two heads.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't.
So the term I've been hearing these days is like they're just a uniparty, and I think people are pretty disgusted about it on no matter what side they're on. They're not happy either way.
Yeah. Well, I look at
Which so
I look at a lot of that stuff, and then I also look at I do finance by day, so I end up looking at a lot of the financial things. And I read something the other day, and it was saying that I think this year, 45% of our tax revenue that comes in services the interest on the national debt. And at the rate the
right.
national debt has been growing, and at the rate taxes and revenue are coming in, they expect it to be 100% of the incoming tax revenue, I think within 10 years. And
So I won't they just print more money? That's what they do. Just print more money. That's
yeah,
that's how
I
they've.
don't know. That's the
I mean, I
question.
don't. That's what they. That's usually the answer. They just print more money.
How many bedrooms
So
do you have at this place in Panama that I can come, we can get, what's our exit
well,
here?
yeah, too. It's a two bed, two bath. It's a nice place too. And believe me, I mean, there's a lot of expats that are looking around down there and
Yeah,
other places for that very reason. They want to have an escape valve, to other places.
right.
Unfortunately, but yeah, but it's. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know all the answers to it, but yes, I think so far, as far as we know. The answer is most people the answer that they give to that is to print more money,
Yeah.
and everybody knows that's a bad idea, and yet no one seems to want to be the or the has the ability to put the stop on it, and get to it and start actually getting our bills, and I don't think either party either seems to be ready to take that on because like I say there's but if they get enough people fighting against each other, then it does you're leading with your if you make people emotional, and this has been shown in every country in the world. Anytime you're being emotional, you're working with a part of your brain called the amygdala,
Hmm.
and what that does is that short circuits your frontal cortex. Your frontal cortex is the area of logic and reason and stuff. And
Right.
so if you can what word they want to keep you away from using that part of your brain, which is thinking logically and rationally. They want to
Hmm.
keep you if you're emotional, you're not going to think rationally,
Right.
and so it doesn't take much to keep people fighting over dumb stuff, and not rationally thinking about where the country's at and what should we really be like multi-trillion dollar debts and
Hmm.
things like that. So I really do think it's intentional, and they know they've been playing. They know this type of manipulation propaganda is from an old playbook. It's nothing new. If you look at Goebbels, playbook in Nazi Germany, he had it down to a science, and that's not new either. If you look at Rome and stuff, they were masters of that stuff. I mean, bread and circus. What was bread and circus? Right? They basically keep the people busy, and they built the Colosseum to give them something to go watch,
Yep.
and that was it. It was called bread and circus, and that kept them busy and not paying attention to the fact that what the Roman Empire was up to. So it's just nothing new under the sun, really. I think the important part is to recognize how you're being manipulated and try to kind of not let yourself get too revved up about certain things because they're trying to do that to you, and two, to sort of look around the corners. So what is it they don't want me to see? What is it they don't want me to look? What do they not want me to be paying attention to?
Right.
And then doing that can help a little bit. I get the anger and all that, because I get myself, I let myself get irritated when I shouldn't. But
Hmm.
I think
It,
that's the trick, though, is to just realize what they're trying, what the goals here are.
it puts a lot of interesting fodder out there for thriller writers, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Although it makes our job
Yeah.
harder because reality is a little bit tricky. And so how do you make it even crazier than what it is? So
Yeah, well, how do you? Yeah, reality is so crazy these days that I mean, you do go through the day feeling like, again, like you're in upside down world or bizarro land or
yeah.
something. Right is wrong and wrong is right and black is white and white is brown, and it's like, where's the stop? It is that is the thing, again, where you just have to stop and take a breath and you know r- realize it'll all come out in the wash one way or the other. you know, and I think if also, if you're a student of history, it helps a lot too, because it gives you, again, some context,
Right.
because I mean, it's always been crazy. Well, being alive, you go back any time in history, look at, we have these riots and stuff, but if you look at like the summer of '68, the
Mhm.
whole country was on fire. I mean, there were mega riots and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. You look at that. I mean, I don't think so I know it always feels like our time is the craziest, most ridiculous time ever, but it's always been
Yeah.
in one way or another. This is still a relatively peaceful time, even with a couple of spots in the globe that, we can cure diseases. I mean, if you look at the big kind of look at the larger picture,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And I think again, as the old expression, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it,
Yep.
kind of thing. And I think if you don't know the history, you're sort of doomed to be overwhelmed by it, because
Mhm.
it's seems so intense, of all these things that are going on. But I can remember some pretty intense things, even the '70s, and the riots and all that. And look at where we were. Go back another 5 years, we're in the middle of a war in Vietnam. And you go back another 5 years or whatever, we're in Korea. Really having
Yeah.
horrible, really awful stuff going on. So
Well,
I do think people, if you sort of can see the big picture and the context, it's not as bad as it may seem.
Cold War times, they used to do drills in schools, get under your desk, get cover
I
because
I did.
Soviet
I'm old
Union
enough for that. I
launching a nuke
remember
at
that.
you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
I remember that.
now
Yeah,
it's
we
active
did that in
shooter
New York. We
drills.
got under our desks. We had nuclear, and the bell would go off and all. I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I asked my mother about it too, and I said, why are we getting under the desk? I was like 6 or something. So why do we get under the desk for nuclear? She goes, I don't
Yeah.
ask. It ain't going to save you anyway. Just do what they tell you. And it went
Exactly.
away. I was pretty young when they stopped doing that, but I remember it very well in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, our little Brooklyn school. I remember as a kid, I'm thinking, what is this going to do for me?
Yeah.
You know?
Um, well, it makes me think of that. Like I was saying, the act now they have active shooter drills for schools, which just shows
Yeah.
where you're at with society. And Dave Chappelle has a bit about it, and he talks about basically, the kid that's probably the shooter could be in that classroom. So you're kind of telling the shooter himself where everyone's supposed to gather. And he's like, he makes it into a humorous anecdote, but basically,
Yeah.
the person that does the shooting probably is going to know exactly where to go to get everybody because you're running a drill to tell them what to do.
Yeah, yeah, you're announcing yourself. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if I was going to do, it would be a little dark, I suppose. But I say I'd be talking about, you guys are worrying about being, shot up. We were worried about being nuked, literally.
Vaporized.
So, again, keep it in context of, we all thought at that time, especially when the height of I don't think people understand how how paranoid people were at the height of the Cold War as to like they were sure like any day now we were all going to be wiped out, and would talk about it. So it was like you're 5, you're 6, 7 years old. It was kind of freaky, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, so yeah, the active shooter thing would suck too for sure. But I tell you, it's definitely not as bad as worrying about you're going to get nuked.
Hmm.
You're a kid, you have lunch, you're in your desk, and it's like jump under the desk because you're in your head, you're thinking, this is it, there's the
Right.
thing, maybe they're coming to nuke us. A lot of kids were pretty, I didn't take it too badly, but some kids were pretty out by that.
Yeah, shook up by it.
They
Absolutely.
would go home and and ask them why do the Russians hate us? Why are they going to nuke us? How do you explain that to your 5-year-old
Right.
or whatever? So, like I say, context is everything.
Hmm.
Perspective and context is everything when you're feeling, overwhelmed or thinking how strange the world is. World has always been fucked up.
The world has had some issues for a long time. Well, let's speak about the world and where we're at now. Let's talk about where we were. So, how did you get in? So, you're not only writing about fictional narratives, fictional stories, but you do obviously a lot of writing when it comes to health, nutrition. Um, how did that occur? You went to Harvard, correct? Degree from Harvard?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, what got you into
yeah.
writing?
Pre-med. I was thinking about going to medical school at one time.
Pre-med. Okay.
So the health thing, I mean, so it goes the other way. I mean, how I got into writing at all was I had I was in class in school. I had a private training business. This is like early 90s. So this is, this is very early. Private trainers were a whole new concept. So I had a private training business, early 90s. I went back to school for my second school. Harvard was a second. I was a little older at that point. Now I was in my late 20s, I guess, something like that, early
Okay.
30s. So I went back to school. Um, and people would just, people said, a lot of stuff, Will, you consider writing some stuff, my
Mhm.
clients like that. And this was, again, remember, there's no internet. So I know some people can't fathom the concept. There's no internet.
Right.
There's no internet. All the reading that we did about bodybuilding or fitness, whatever, was in the magazines.
Hmm.
So you always went to the bookstore. I'd go to the bookstore every week or month and look for the new ones. And I'd get my Muscle Mag and my Muscle and Fitness and my Flex and all those. We got all those stacks of those magazines.
Hmm.
Um, I sent an article to Muscle Mag International. Um, and I didn't hear back from them. I didn't hear anything. These are big magazines. I mean, they had millions of readers. They had these were, I think Muscle Mag had 2 or 3 million readers. Muscle and Fitness was the biggest one. They had like 12 million readers. So these were big. So I didn't hear anything back. And I thought, okay, now, I gave it a shot, not going to happen. And I kind of forgot about it.
Hmm.
And I went into the bookstore the next month and I'm looking through Muscle Mag and I was like I'm looking through it. I'm like, that looks really familiar. And I was like, and I yelled in the middle, like, that's my
That's
article. And all everybody in the bookstore, looked at it. It's a quiet bookstore. Got that. And so I went back and, I found the masthead and I called him and I said, that's my article. How come nobody ever He said, oh, we lost your address. We figured you'd pop up. We figured you'd find. Now, imagine if I had missed that one article, never saw that I was in this stupid magazine. But
right.
they said, oh, yeah, they were a very informal, casual bunch over there. And
Hmm.
he said, well, we lost your address. We figured you'd see it and you'd show up.
You'd reach
So
out.
yeah, you'd reach out. So then I said, okay, well, if maybe it's a fluke, I'll write two more. And if
Hmm.
I get three more, if I get three articles in this magazine, then it's meant to be. Okay, I can actually do this. So that was sort of my plan. They
Hmm.
took all three of them, and that's really like how it went.
Okay.
And I started writing for the magazines and a bunch of different magazines, and then I started to get contacted from some companies that asked me if I would be interested in doing some consulting work for them, product development, marketing, that type of thing. I also worked at that. Then I started working with like some pro bodybuilders, other pro athletes. I worked with some track and field people and some
Mm.
pro golfers.
And working with
Um,
them, were you just training them to try to just build muscle to get stronger? What was the
well, nutrition,
nutrition?
supplements,
Okay.
Everything more or less, but make them just more or less healthier and stronger. Now, what I would try to do is obviously would be to diagnose or assess what they needed. Where did they need, what they
Gotcha.
needed?
See
Sometimes it
what.
was an injury. Sometimes it was, put a little muscle on, just get a little stronger.
Mhm.
Sometimes it was recoup a little fast. They were not recouping type thing. So I would try to assess what the the problem was. And I did then end up doing, I would do seminars for law enforcement. I worked with police departments, or at least some SWAT teams. In the 90s, I was a trainer for SWAT teams. Um, I was also an adjunct trainer for Smith and Wesson for a minute. Had
Okay.
two courses I developed for Smith and Wesson in their Smith and Wesson Performance Center. So had again some connections with law enforcement, military. So I was sort of all over the place, and was also real ferocious reader of thrillers,
Hmm.
science fiction, a lot of science fiction,
Yeah.
and thrillers, and always back in my mind, I always wanted to write something, something in the thriller, either thriller or science fiction.
Hmm.
It was always in the back of my sort of head, but I needed again to, um, I needed, I guess, sort of that sort of aha moment as to like what would the plot be. I knew I had a good sense of I had my favorite styles, the people that I sort of liked, that I thought
Hmm.
that sort of patterned after, or at least or influence, I guess would say influence.
Yeah.
That took a while. Nothing really came to me. I knew I knew I would know I would know it when I saw it, say, that's the idea. That's what I want to go with. So I was well known in the nonfiction. I wrote, I was published all over the world in a dozen languages or so, because those muscle mags were all published in German and Polish. And
Hmm.
my favorite was the Japanese. Somebody sent me a Japanese version of my article. I thought I got it around here somewhere.
That's cool.
It just looks really cool. I like that one.
Yep.
Uh, so yeah, so then this was quite a bit later, but I mean, I was still writing and consulting work, and then um, finally an idea. I was sitting in my condo in Panama, actually,
Mm.
um, and it just hit me like, wait a second, I should base it on Panama. Two guys from the special operations community come to Panama for a vacation, and
Mm.
one of them disappears, and there it is. There's the story.
There's your
And
plot.
that just and I sat down and wrote the whole thing out, 40,000 words that weekend. It just poured out of me. It
Wow.
was all there for me. It had been rattling in my head. And I, as if I usually write novellas. I like novellas too, but it's just,
Hmm.
again, my style is a little different. But I've always written novellas. I like
Yeah.
the pacing.
Hmm.
I like the pacing of novellas. But yeah, I wrote about 40,000 words that weekend. I just had it. It was all there. I was able to base it on Panama, and use, use locations, and sort of bring people into the Panama thing, because I know it really well. That really helped. So I could sort of lay out the land, sort of little map of where I was going, and send them around and all that. And they do. There's four of those guys, and only one of them finishes off in Florida, basically, because now I was in Florida, and I wanted to get the Navy SEAL Museum involved in it. So three of them out of the four of the series are all in Panama. He goes back to Panama.
Okay.
So and that was sort of my uh, first sort of um, push, sort of dedicated, focused, push to try to get a series of novellas out,
Hmm.
on the thriller, and I was at one spinoff, and I haven't then since then I've tried. Well, then I did some science fiction, because, like I say, science fiction is really my first love of I'd like to write, if I could sort of sit and write. I enjoy the thriller stuff. I enjoy it a lot, but I think as far as I really like science fiction, because of my science background, having read a lot of science fiction,
Right.
but it's hard. Science fiction is hard.
Yeah.
Even with the science background, it's hard. I tell you. You think again, the greats. This is the problem with people. As the people that don't write, as always, the greats make it seem so easy.
Hmm.
It doesn't seem that hard when you read somebody's great book,
Yeah.
whether it's a great science fiction book. And then as soon as you sit down to try to do it, you realize how good these people are. And I knew I could do thrillers well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I'm not Stephen Hunter level good,
Hmm.
but I think I'm in here somewhere. But he had a long time to, I read some of his early stuff, and it's good, but you can see, if you ever follow an author, you really see get
Hmm.
how much better they get as
The
time.
progression.
I don't like Stephen Hunter's earlier stuff, where it has nothing to do with
Bob Lee Swagger.
Bob the Nailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a whole, prior to that, he wrote he wrote a book on the Spanish Revolution,
Hmm.
a whole bunch of sort of random things. They're good, but you can definitely tell that the quality of his writing and the sophistication and all that just really started to take off. So it gives me some, but science fiction is especially difficult, I find.
So
And I've tried.
what parts of it are hard for you, or where's the struggle with science fiction? Just in making it sound realistic, but having to make up a lot of the details, or what is
Yeah,
this?
yeah, all of that. Yeah, some of it's, I mean, I like also, I'm very drawn to what they call hard science. I don't know if you
Okay.
ever do, have you ever read any science fiction, but there's sort of a category like people like David Niven. They're very science oriented. There's a lot of like you could a science fiction story like Asimov and stuff. He didn't write hard science. If I say, um, I grew up on Mars, we had a nice farm, that's science fiction. But there's not a lot of science going on there. There's not physics, there's not trajectories. You can write an entire science fiction story and have very little, just
So,
that the fact that it takes place on a planet makes now, or you can write about ship trajectories and engines and star clusters. And I like that they call it hard science. They're very science oriented. And that's the kind of stuff I like to write. That's the kind of stuff I like to read. So yeah, it can get, and you want to be right. You don't want, there's always going to be somebody reading and going, you can't, that vector is off by 3%. Nobody can do 3% of the speed of light on a vector like that. I had somebody send me one letter telling me that the nature of light did not refract that way that I had written, and it's like, oh Christ. But, and, it gets in your head a little bit, and it gets that way too with in the thriller books, you get the same thing, but I'm pretty good with those details. I feel comfortable with those details, but I mean, you'll absolutely, and I have to say, I'm almost one of them. Um, one of the reasons I started doing that was because I wanted to write something that was really tight on the details, the little details, because a lot of books are ruined for me when the details are wrong.
yeah.
It ruins a book for me. And I'm a shooter. I did an IDPA. I know my way around guns and things like that. And I just found a lot of books for me were ruined, with people not knowing the little details. And so that was one goal for sure. One goal was to get all those little details right,
Right.
that and my goal was to be able to give it to guys that I knew who were in the SEAL teams, in special operations, and they
Mhm.
would, and they would not give me a hard time. They'd say, yeah, it's solid, Will. You're right. What they call wall bangers, which is it's so bad you throw it against the wall. And they
Right.
said yours was not a wall banger. And I was very happy that I got really good feedback from
Mhm.
people that do that for a living.
Yeah.
And that was my goal. That was kind of my primary goal, was to have all those little details correct,
Right.
because it does ruin it for me when they get things like that wrong,
Yeah.
Sure. And it could be something very small, but if it's tweaky stuff. But and I ran it by them to get feedback from them too, to
Yeah.
say, can I do this? Is this I did have beta readers, and there was a couple things, and I said, I would change that, I'd move that. There were little things that most people wouldn't notice, but for the
Mhm.
people that are in the community and do this type of thing, it means a lot to them that somebody, you know, got it right. So that was a big one.
I had a scene in my first book, The Body Man, where the characters are removing these bags of diamonds from a safety deposit box in New York City. And one of my
Mm.
beta readers came back with comments, and he said, I'm in the diamond industry. He said, you would never have a bag of diamonds. He's like, because the only thing that can cut a diamond is a diamond. He said, and
Right.
he said, so it would be much more realistic if you have the diamonds in individual envelopes or something that
Right, right. So
you
they're
can,
not whacking, banging
yeah,
around in a bag and chipping each
keeps them
other and
separate.
stuff. Yeah.
So, but it was one of those cool things that I changed, that I took that advice and said, cool, I had no idea. I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
Changed it. Very few people would ever know if I had left it how it was, probably. But getting that, like you said, the details, and the other advice that I'd gotten years ago from someone from the special forces was, if you feel like you have to state the specific weapon that someone has, you better be 100% sure that's correct, whether it's the FBI or what the SEAL team is
Yep.
using or whatever.
Yep.
Because if
Yeah. That's the
not,
thing. Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
crucify you. You're better off to
Yeah.
say he drew a gun than to
Yep.
say
Yeah.
he drew his
Yeah.
Glock 40 and
Yeah.
broke it.
And that's what I tend to get really into the nitty gritty of that stuff. to make, I research what they're using, calibers they're using, how much would they have carried on them. And I've shot you most of those anyway.
Hmm.
Or as you said, and as you said, when in doubt, just generalize. Don't fake it. That's the thing. Don't fake it. That's what makes them mad. So if you're in doubt and you don't have then say he drew a pistol,
Right.
and then, or, that's that. But I really do like, because I like the sort of details of things, and I do know that they like to hear, and also like Hunter, like Stephen Hunter does a really good job, did a good job with some of that. He would get into the details
Hmm.
of the shot, that one shot,
Right.
uh, and in the bullet and putting the bullet in and all that. And what kind of gun it was, what type of, what was it, what was it set up for, that kind of thing. So, and what I really wanted, at least with one goal, was to just have those guys that I know read it and not get, pissed off about it, because I know it irritates me. And so tactics and mindset, I wanted the mindset to be there. That was a big one. I think a lot of times the stuff that I read that other people wrote was I felt like the mindset wasn't really there
Hmm.
in terms of the way they talk or think, or,
Sure.
that kind of thing. So I was proud of that. That's, like I said, that's the part I'm happy about. And I did, like I said, there were the things like you had with the diamonds. I had little things like that come back and say, well, he probably would. You could put the gun there in his waistband, but it would he'd move it over to here if he knew he was an imminent gunfight. He's going to the door. I think you probably should move it from that side to that side. One little tiny thing,
One
but
little.
it would matter. You go into the restaurant, and if you got to reach over and they know you're coming, you're probably a dead man at that point. So
Mhm.
that was one goal. I mean, that was one sort of strategic goal for me. And unfortunate, I mean, maybe, well, there's the people that don't care, they don't even notice. So hopefully you cover them. But the people that I wanted to make sure I was sort of covering them, which maybe is a small niche of people, but
Mhm.
I was able to achieve that at least, and
Yeah,
have
no,
some.
there's nothing wrong with that. Do you
Yeah.
feel, because you've written both in the fiction and the nonfiction world, are you able to write in both types of books at the same time, or do you have to partition, like, okay, I'm going to write something on the fiction side, more of the thriller side or the sci-fi side, and I can't, or are you also writing on the health side at the same time?
Yeah, it really depends on how well I'm doing at either one of them. I mean, if I'm on a roll and I really got stuff I want, I can get out. I'll stay with that science fiction or whatever book.
Gotcha.
If it's like it's not really going that great, and I got things that need to be done, whether it's an article, or a report, or something, a science report or something, I might break off. And but if I'm really in a flow, I'll try to just stay there,
Mhm.
till I break out of it. But I more or less play it by ear as to how things are going, because at some point you kind of run out of, you get brain tired and say, okay, maybe
Right.
I should do something else. I'm not very good at sort of cordoning off, just doing this one thing till it's done, uh
Mhm.
and I try. I mean, obviously the best way to do that is sometimes, like, just get up and go to the library, out of your own house. Sometimes I go to the college library. I know some people, they go on they just go some people just go rent a hotel room,
Yep.
and I haven't done that, but I do sometimes. I do some of my best writing on the plane,
Hmm.
because I have no distraction. I like to get on the plane because I usually, I'll just open up my little keyboard and start clacking away, and it's dark, and before I know it, I'm there, and I've
Yep.
had 6 hours or 8 hours to write. So I do tend to like to write on the plane. Like I say, sometimes if it's just too many distractions, I got two dogs, girlfriend making noise, whatever, or it's just too easy to, um, watch a YouTube thing, and
Yep.
before I know it, 5 hours have gone by, and I've just watched a bunch of videos. So I
Yep.
find some days, if I just get myself, like, say, go to the college library, which I used to do in college when I was in college, can break that habit,
Mhm.
because if I've got too much distractions, I have to say I'm gonna write, 1,000 words, and then I'm gonna go get a drink of water, and then I'm gonna have something to eat, and before I
Yep.
know it, it's, I respect people that are able to kind of, like, just push everything away
Right.
and just, zone in on it. You know, this is, I'm gonna change. I'm not changing topic. We're still talking about writing,
No, 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 it's
but it's
fine.
that's something I do want to say, and I see if you agree with me, is the one, I would say at least half of the success of writers, of really writers, is volume, sheer volume. And if you can knock out one or two novels a year minimum and be really consistent, if you notice the biggest names out there, we're not going to name names because some of them aren't that good, to be honest with you. But I
Mhm.
mean, there's some very big name. But if you notice what if you look at one thing that's similar to all of them, is they crank out book after book after book. Sheer volume, I think, will account for half of your success,
Yep.
if not more.
Yep.
And I don't have it. This is my Achilles heel. I can't crank out, even when I was writing, articles for magazines and stuff, I would have some really good months and then I would have nothing.
Right.
And I had been told by various people, well, if you were just more consistent,
Mhm.
you're building up a good audience and then you disappear for 2 or 3 months. I mean, I think that if I could just, that was always my Achilles heel, though.
Mhm.
And I've really come to the conclusion of, you look at some of the biggest names out there, they're just crank out one, if not two novels a year for decades.
Yep. That
And at
100.
some point, yeah, at some point, one of those novels is going to ripple with somebody, and then the rest of them are all going to, you know, and these are, at least in my view, these are usually names that aren't great writers. They
Mhm.
just, like I say, they're just cranking out the books, and it's, you got some, basically you end up with something for everybody, I think, is what happens.
Right.
But
Well, and if you
I
crank
don't.
them out, because you've got a small percentage of people that are actually able to make a really good living writing, and it's a small percentage. You have a big
Very
percentage of people that make something. Some of those
something,
people,
yeah.
that something might be enough to live on. Some of those people, that's something to supplement their income. And then you
Yeah,
have the lower end of it that make nothing, and actually worse than that, all they do is
they
spend
put
money.
money in.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
put
spend
money
money,
in
yeah.
and never getting any of it back,
Yeah,
or so little of it
absolutely.
back. Um,
It's probably, yeah, that's a pretty good portion of it too, I think,
it
at
is
this
a good
point.
portion, yeah.
Yeah.
But what you see when it comes to volume and where it makes a big difference, not so much with the bigger houses, although there are those that do it, because the bigger houses a lot of times only want you to have one book out a year, maybe two, but they don't want you to
Mm,
be putting four books out a year. They want your brand to be, hey, you're such and such New York Times bestseller, and your book comes out every June, and you're their staple for June. They love that. But
right.
authors that start their own, indie publishing or indie press and self-publish, that's where you see the ones that I know that are making more money, honestly, than a lot of the New York Times bestsellers. They're not putting out one book a year. They have to be putting out 4 to 5 to 6 books, and
Yeah,
then
they're machines. Those guys,
their
if you
machines.
can get
Yeah.
that volume, if you get that volume out, that's the key right there, is that
And,
volume.
and once you get that volume out too, once someone finds, say they find your seventh or eighth book you've written,
Yeah.
they'll go and they like it, they go buy your first six
Yeah.
or seven. And
Yeah, that's what
so,
happens. Yeah, it all goes, now you've got a whole catalog of books for them to read.
yeah.
Honestly, I think, as far as from a popularity and sales, the person that can put out 8 decent books, you put out one you know, brilliant novel every 10 years or 5 years, you're the other guys who put out 10 novels in the last 3 years, he's gonna be selling a lot more. He's gonna have a lot more people following him and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, if you look, like I said, I think you look at the really big popular names that these people have been churning out, and that's hard. I mean, I have a lot of respect for them.
Mhm.
I may not think they're the greatest writers in the world, but I have a lot of respect for that. They can sit there and churn out novel after novel like
Yeah.
that. That's hard work.
It is
And
hard.
I tell you've done it. It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I
trying to
just
put
don't have.
two out this year and two next year. And
Uh,
there's stuff that a lot of the portions are there. I'm just having to go through and refine them and add some
mm,
to those. But um it's that's your
yeah,
free time, a lot of it.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a lot of work. Two novels a year would be a lot of work. I couldn't do it. I mean, I like you say, if I'm lucky, I've been putting out like one novella a year.
Right.
And with COVID, and again, when COVID, and all, you'd think I had nothing to do, but I could have sat and read. But it was so stressful time. Again, my creativity was just
Right.
not there. Yes, I would sit there and stare in my office with nothing to do all day, but it just didn't. I had no ambition to write at all.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I should have put out the All American, my biggest novel ever or something. But at the moment, I mean, like I say, I usually, I mean, I have other work to do and all that, but it's just from a creativity point of view. I'm usually lucky to get, a novella, like 40,000 words out a year at this point.
Yeah.
You got the four in the series of Vacation Goes South, one spinoff of his uncle, three science fiction novellas, one fantasy. I've been really wanting to see. Also, I've been sort of extending myself, writing in different genres that I've wanted to write in,
Mhm.
and I've always wanted to do historical fiction. I love good historical fiction, which is also a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah.
Again, the great ones make it look so easy. But I did do my first historical fiction novella, which I like it, but it's a very touchy subject. It takes place in a concentration camp in
Okay.
Germany. Um, but that was my latest. But I would like to do more historical fiction. I love
Mhm.
good historical fiction, and so I'm sort of been stretching myself a little bit.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And yeah, I do have one thing that's sort of, like a lot of writers, I've got these like half written things sitting around that I need to get back to.
Mhm.
I have a part two of my fantasy novella, which did well. That came out. I was really happy with it myself. It got really good reviews. People really like that one. So I'm sort of halfway through part two, and again, you get like you get there, and then something just like all the ideas just drop off a cliff.
Right.
And how long do you stare at it before you say, well, let me just go do something
I'm
else?
gonna do something else.
So a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, you're still staring at it like I got nothing. So
Yeah.
maybe I need to start something else. So I have that sort of so I this year I've sort of trying to stretch a little bit and try some different genres. There's some great writers. And what the writers did in the past was had to write under pseudonym.
I was just
That's
gonna
what they
say
did.
that. Yep.
Kurt Vonnegut. Yeah, Kurt Vonnegut wrote science fiction, but he couldn't write it under his name.
Right.
And there's a few of them that did that because it basically they were so genre typecast they couldn't write anything else. So I think it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
There's I don't know. Do you know Eric Stevenson?
I do.
He
I know of the name at least.
Yeah, so he's great. He's a great writer. He's a writer that's way in the stratosphere as far as writing ability. I'd put him at the very top. Wrote some started off in science fiction. It's really good science fiction too. But then he also did he's done some historical fiction,
Hmm.
and he did one which are called the History of the World. It was a big these three books all about about 1,000 pages. History of the World, which is historical fiction, and it was put in the science fiction section.
Hmm.
They could not the poor guy cannot write outside of what he's known
Outside.
for. So this is historical fiction. I found it in the science fiction section because the people that are at the bookstores, they see, they know Steven Erikson science fiction, boom, that's it, goes on the shelf, and they don't look. So the poor guy
Typecast.
who's a tremendous writer can't change his genre to
Yeah.
have a little fun with it. And I don't
Yeah.
know if people that like my thriller stuff are going to be willing to give my fantasy thing a shot, or give my historical fiction thing a try. But I think and I'm sure this is a whole other topic. I mean, I know advice for myself, if somebody's been writing a long time. I mean, I write what I want to write. I write what I want to read. I don't
Yep.
I tell anybody that's asking me about getting into it is don't write by committee. Don't ever
Mhm.
write by committee. Don't write what you think is going to be popular. Because I always see on the groups, I'm a moderator on some of the writers groups, and people are always asking, do you think this topic would be popular? Who cares? That's irrelevant. That's not the point. Don't write by committee or what you think is going to be right. What you want to write, what you would want to read, what's in your head that you want to write. If other people happen to like it, that's great. I
Mhm.
mean, if not, then they don't. And that's just how it goes. But um, do you think Hemingway sat around worrying about, is this going to be popular? You I don't see Hunter S. Thompson sitting around worrying about what was going to be popular, or is this going to resonate with the kids,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
I and again, yeah.
I've told people that from the
So
get-go.
I've always written,
I do the same
yeah,
thing.
I've always
I
written,
write
I
from
write my stuff for me. I write my stuff for me. I don't write, by committee or what I think is going to be popular or not popular. And
Mm,
and I think that type of thing comes across. But I do think there's a lot of, just like music and stuff, there's a lot of people that write specifically for an audience.
mm,
And they're only trying to get to that audience and make that audience happy. They're not writing for anything that's, they have that means something to them, or they have passion about, or they're trying to say something, or, that
right.
kind of thing. And
What
it sells.
it's probably works the same as with writing, but it's difficult once, especially music. Once you hear something, once you hear the Rolling Stones come out with an album, if the Rolling Stones, they're a bad example, I guess, because they've been so big for so long. But someone that breaks out and has a good album and it's a rock album or a blues album, for them to go do a pop or a disco album, all those people that enjoyed that album, chances are they're going to say, this isn't their thing. So maybe there's a crossover there with writing where if you've gotten so many books out or several books out that people gravitate towards and they don't like to read science fiction or they don't like to read something else, then they won't go for it. But I agree completely. You write for yourself. You write the stories because if you don't believe in the stories and don't enjoy the stories you're writing, how do you expect an audience to do it?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're writing and you're thinking, oh, is the audience going to like this part? That you ruined it. You've already lost yourself right there.
Yeah.
At least for me, I never stop and think, is this the thing the audience is going to want to hear or not going to want to hear? This is what I want to talk about. I think they'll come with me on this story. I think they'll enjoy, where this is coming from, but I don't make any thoughts as to, again, which I consider writing by a committee,
Yeah, I think that's a good way
whereas
to put it. Yeah.
what's popular these days, people, so what? I mean, yeah, vampires, zombies, whatever, they all been done to death, but so what? Maybe yours is an original idea.
Right.
Maybe, they're still selling, I mean, people are saying, I don't want to write it because it's overdone. At the end of the day, there really is probably there's not a new idea under the sun. I mean, I think if we're being honest, I think there's no brand new ideas that exist. So it's really, the ability to take a concept, whatever it may be, and make it yours. Not worry about somebody else already wrote a zombie story. I mean, it's people love zombie stories. They seem like never ending. I think zombie category outsells like all the other ones.
Hmm.
So I think it's what you refer to as like paralysis by analysis. People worry, and I think younger generations again are as independently thinking as we may be, or as sort of, hey, I'm going to do what I want to do, and if you like it, I think they're more culturally brought up to consider what other people are going to think about them, worry
Hmm.
about what they're going to think about them. Are they going to like what I'm writing? And that's going to just ruin your whole flow. You got to sit down and write what makes you happy. And like I say, I don't see, like I say, I don't see the great writers having worried about that kind of thing. At least you hope not.
I don't think
And
so. Well, when you talk about the creativity, I think it was something online recently. It was speaking of nothing's been done, everything's already been done or everything's already been said, and you're just putting your spin on it.
yeah.
I put a quote on the on a reply to someone's post or whatever, and it was a quote from a Bono, one of his song lyrics. But the lyric basically said, "Every artist is a cannibal, every poet is a thief." And that's one of
Mhm.
those ones that always popped in my head as I've been writing over the years. It's like,
That's a good one.
yeah,
Yeah,
a
that's it. That's
brilliant way
true.
of putting
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah. It's pretty, yeah, it's concise
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, it's pretty much is what it is. Yeah. I mean, there's really only, yeah. I mean, you can only put a spin or your own idea on a thing, but I really think pretty much conceptually, all the words have been used in one way or another, but so what? Like I say, but people, like I say, a lot of people, especially younger people that I communicate with and stuff, it prevents them from moving forward.
Hmm.
Like I say, causes the paralysis by analysis, and they start asking other people, "What do you think about this?" And all you're going to do, you're always going to get 10 different opinions too. That's the other
Yeah.
problem. There's some things don't ask opinions about. What's your opinion? What do you think? Do you like it or not? If you like it, do it. And if nobody
Yeah.
reads it, well, it sucks. But so what? You did it. You got it out.
Yep.
Maybe somebody will come back. I mean, I knew the topic of writing about concentration camp was a kind of a nichey thing to
Hmm.
write about, but that's what I had passion about it.
Yep.
It's based on a true person. She was a real person. And I found it very inspiring, and I wanted to put my little, twist, and I thought I had some things to add to it
Hmm.
that I thought would be interesting, but it's not exactly light reading.
Right.
And,
Well,
and I knew it wouldn't be. I mean,
like you were talking about with the generation now, and I attribute most of it to this nice little cell phone that we all have,
yeah,
or almost all of us have in our pockets now. Is we both grew up in a generation and a time where yeah, you wanted acceptance. You weren't, but you didn't have social media out there that is addictive, where anything you post, who gets the most likes, who gets the most reposts
yeah,
or retweets
right,
or shares or whatever.
right.
We didn't we weren't hardwired to expect that. So it'll be very interesting going forward with the generation that's, starting to be in their 20s now that are turning into writers of yeah, what
Right.
decisions
Yeah.
will they
Yeah.
make?
So their mindset is more, again, they're already thinking and worrying about what are others going to think about this? They're probably so conditioned from the putting up a photo or whatever they were doing that they're already conditioned to think, I'm going to worry about other people think about it before they even see it, and should I say this? Am I allowed to say that? And you're allowed to say whatever you want. This is my response when I'm on these forums, like I say, with new writers and people talking about, is it okay to say this? Is it okay? And I go, it's your book.
Right.
You say whatever you want. If
Hmm.
other people don't like it, that's their problem.
They
That's
don't have
something
to read it.
where whether an editor may kind of help you steer you in a direction or something, but don't ever worry about whether you're allowed to say a thing or can't say a thing, or should I broach this topic? I mean, yeah, we would not have had the great books of our time if people were worrying about such things.
Hmm.
But I think you're touched on something with the conditioning of modern day life, where you're always trying to uh, get likes and get acceptance, and you're worrying about that like right away. And
Yep.
so I think they're thinking the same thing.
Yep.
And yes, it will be interesting to see what the next generation of writers, um, write to. And I think it'll still be very similar. I mean, most writing that's out there is written sort of for the masses, right? I mean, there's the most stuff, just like music, just like art and movies. I mean, for being honest about it, most of it is what's out there is written for a mass audience to be interested by the most number of people, accepted by the highest number of people, and that's fine. It's got its place.
Hmm.
But I think, you and I are interested in are more talking about stuff that has more of a niche, more of a meaning. And there's even within the thriller genre or whatever, there's also stuff that's what do they call them, like airport books or whatever, that sort of, again, they're not really heavy reads. They're not really telling you anything. Um, and again, I was never a big fan myself. Stuff like Dan Brown. I did never saw what not, it was okay. It was bad. I didn't get it. It
It
just didn't do anything for me.
didn't work for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was just sort of vanilla, stuff to me. Some
Right.
some pretty big names. But
Well,
he sold because,
he sold a lot. Yeah, I've struggled with
he
that
sold a lot of
myself.
books.
Because I've written, I've read so much over the years, and a lot of, and in my formative years in high school and college, a lot of the books I gravitated towards, turned into series where you had Vince Flynn writing about Mitch Rapp and,
Yeah, yeah.
Brad Thor writing about Scott Harvath. And I loved those. As I've gotten older and as I started to develop my own writing career, I've gotten my opinion on it's changed in a way of, man, I don't want to start every book knowing that I've got my core character and he's gonna have to live because I have a 5 book deal with Penguin. So I
Right,
can't kill that main character off. I'm trying to craft my stuff where, especially like with the Body Man series, I created it to be a role instead of a person. There's a person in that role. But, you know, spoiler alert, a future Body Man book, Body Man might die. I mean, I killed the apprentice in the first book in the Body Man.
right.
So I like that idea of the people are disposable because I think that gives a little bit more because it's been years since I've read some of the big name books out there with the characters that always live, but I got to the point where I was like, well, he's not gonna die. He might get shot
Right.
6 or 7 times and thrown out of a plane, and somehow he hits the tree just right and lives and doesn't
Well,
shatter every bone in his
Like
body.
Jason Bourne, you always know he's going to live.
Right.
It's a guarantee Jason Bourne's going to live. Well, I remember, like, in Vince's Flynn's book, which really blew me away, was when he killed his wife. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked
Right.
because I was, I was a young man reading that, and I didn't think he would do it. I was like, I can't believe he just killed off his wife. And I thought maybe it was a dream sequence. I'm sure something, but it was. And it's funny because the series it was kind of in the middle of the series, and it was kind of losing its edge a little bit. It was kind of, a lot of books, right? You can't write great stuff forever. And I
Right.
think it was around, I want to say it was around like the fourth or fifth book in the series of Mitch Rapp. And because now he's settled down, he's got married. I mean, how edgy can you be, right?
Right.
And so it felt to me like it was kind of losing its edge.
Yeah, it's
And I
magic.
think he felt that either somebody said something to him or he felt the same way
Right.
because he then kills his wife off, which this is a main character who's been in these like five. They met in the very first book. You remember they met at the White House.
Hmm.
Remember his very first book? They met at the White House. She was a reporter and he, broke into the White House. So this is a major character who's been, five books in. And I was stunned. And after he killed off his wife, it got better again. I mean, it was edgy. Mitch Rapp was back because he was mad as fuck. Now he's
Right.
mad. Now he's pissed and he's back to being Mitch Rapp. But there was a couple of them that it felt like he was kind of losing it. And I think he
Mhm.
either, like I say, either he felt that way or somebody said something to him.
Yep.
But yeah, I think if you can do that, I haven't. I got to say, I haven't really gotten that advanced. Um, I so far, I think my characters mostly are, the guy's gonna make it. He's
Mhm.
just that tough. But
Right.
I'll always pick. I definitely try to have enough drama where certainly a main character, a central character, sort of peripheral to him,
Yep.
either, well, I'm not on there's one particular thing I don't want to give away if anybody hasn't read them. But anyway, I definitely try to make it seem realistic and that people can get hurt,
Yep.
people can get shot, bad things happen. But I will say I haven't really had but I tell you, I never forgot that. When he killed off Mitch Rapp's wife, I was blown away by that. And I was like, wow, that took balls.
Hmm.
And I bet you got a lot of, I bet people, this pre-internet, nobody could send him nasty emails, but I wonder if he got some nasty letters. I mean, or, people I would imagine he did.
Trying to remember. I think was it Anna Riley was her name?
Hmm.
That the character was that the
Yeah. Yeah. Anna Riley.
I think it was Anna Riley. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Anna
honestly
Riley.
I
Yeah.
forgot he killed her off. That's how
Yeah. He did.
I've
Yeah.
read
He
so many
did. I
books
can
since
say,
then. That's
I
crazy.
never forgot it. I'm telling you, it got me. I was just like, no way. And I was like I said, this is a long time. This is probably 20 plus years ago. But I was just, this has got to be a dream sequence or something. I can't imagine how much, but I did say that the energy, the sort of the series really did get
Hmm.
back to its pacing and stuff. Because again, Mitch Rapp he can't be married. That just makes no sense. He's not Mitch Rapp.
Right.
He's settling down. He's not angry. He's got to be on the edge and out killing terrorists.
Yeah. Well, it also if you put someone like that in a family situation, it takes a lot of if he's on an exotic trip and he's, what's he gonna cheat on his wife, and then he's, an absolute
Mm,
scumbag. So
mm.
he can't seduce the countess. He can't go after the
Yeah.
woman in
Mm.
Venice. He can't, do the stuff that, the titillating stuff that people want to
Yeah.
see in the
All the good
thriller.
stuff. Yes. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, who knows if the Mitch Rapp character could even exist today in today's, I mean, I don't know if Mitch Rapp could even be Mitch Rapp anymore, frankly. I mean, I know they're still writing under other names, but it's not the
Yeah.
same Mitch Rapp. I wonder if the true, I mean, look what they did to James Bond. I mean, he's,
Hmm.
in our modern society, I mean, James Bond, we all know what is James Bond is a man whore. He's a slut. He's a heavy drinker and he's a slut. And then they took, and then the modern James Bond, the guy's like got one girlfriend.
Right.
And it just, I know it's not culturally the way the modern world is, but that was James Bond. When I grew up, James Bond, he slept with at least four or five women per movie, and and he didn't even leave him a phone number, and was drinking a martini, with a gun in his hand, and that was James Bond.
Right.
That's why I liked him. But I mean, yeah, the last few, and I liked, I mean, I liked the actor that played the last few James Bond. I thought did a really good job, but I just didn't think I didn't think the material they gave him was very good.
Yeah.
I
Is it
said that
Daniel
was he
Craig
was
that plays?
great, James Bond.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Daniel Craig, I
So
think.
yeah, I mean, yeah, Daniel Craig. Yeah, I thought
Mhm.
he was a great James Bond, but I don't think I didn't think they did him any favors with you know with the movie themselves. With the way they went, I think they could have been really good movies. They didn't do anything. The first one, Casino Royale, was quite good, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a whole new James Bond. It's going to be more raw. It's going to be more realistic. And that was it. After that, to me, they were all they just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And he, like I say, now he's like now he's like open for old people and stuff, because he wants to be. He's the nice James Bond.
The nice
And
James Bond.
I don't think he even slept around, did he? I mean, he had one girlfriend. He had the one girlfriend who he was heartbroken over, and that's about
Yeah.
it, from what I can tell. So yeah,
Well,
I
I
think they
don't.
got to retire James Bond.
Yeah, and speaking of which, like, just I know they tried to do Vince Flynn movie. I don't America Assassin maybe is what it was.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
It
yeah,
was watchable once. That's all I
yeah,
saw
yeah.
was
I
once.
was
I wouldn't
thinking
watch
of
it
yeah,
again.
yeah. It
Brad
wasn't
Thor
great.
Brad Thor's teased that his movie rights, that they're doing something with his character with the Scott, but that's never. And it's interesting because it seems like Hollywood just keeps putting out one clunker after another with a couple hits sprinkled in, but man, there's some great books out there that you can even change. You can
Yeah.
tweak the book.
Well, I mean, I think the Vince Flynn movie, you said it was okay. The one that was just an abomination was Stephen Hunter's book. They made a movie out of it, and it was terrible.
Oh, Shooter,
Shooter,
Mark
yeah,
Wahlberg.
it
Okay.
was nothing like the book for one thing. It was
Right.
casting was completely wrong. It just sucked. I was very disappointed because how do you ruin that? That is such a good book. The entire you that could have been like a really good book, like movie, like a top-notch movie,
Yeah.
right up there. And and but the casting was all wrong, and
Mhm.
it just it was terrible. And I was looking forward to it because I was thinking, this could be really good. But obviously the main character was supposed to be a grizzled Vietnam veteran. So you saw who they put in for the main character.
Right.
The character that should have been Tommy Lee Jones. That role was handpicked for Tommy Lee Jones. That's
Mhm.
Bob the Nailer right there.
Right.
And boy, would it, if you get the right directors, the right directors who knew how to make that really give that the right feel. That could have been a great movie from a book, and they just
Yeah.
ruined it.
Well,
Yeah,
then
no, they don't seem to pull it off.
Without Remorse, Tom Clancy, that came out maybe about 2 years ago now back, and that was, I was like, oh, cool, that's a great Tom Clancy book.
I didn't even see it. I heard it was really bad, so I
No, it
didn't
was
even bother seeing it.
unwatchable,
I heard it was
unwatchable.
terrible.
Don't
Yeah,
watch it.
I didn't. I think Jack Carr is he's got a movie. I think that's a done deal. I think he's got a movie coming out.
Well, the Prime series came out, was it last year or the year before? They season one came out of the Terminal List, and
Okay, that's right, right.
they're
With
filming a prequel series now. I think it's in
all right, with a
production right
series.
now.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that either because was it Chris Pratt? Is that who was?
Chris
I
Pratt,
just don't
yeah,
see
Chris
him as
Pratt did
again.
it.
He's okay in some movies, but I just don't see again. He's just that's not the right casting. So I don't know why Hollywood cannot get, I mean, one of these books, great books, and make a good adaptation of it that just hits it right out of you got to get the right director and somebody, but I mean, but Point Blank, but that was, yeah, Hunter's first was Point Blank or no, Point of Impact.
Point of
Point
Impact.
of Impact was his first Bob the Nailer book, of which they made the Shooter movie, which was
Mhm.
just awful. And I don't even know why they bothered, pretending it was based on because they were nothing like each other other than the fact that he had a rifle occasionally. But
Yeah.
I do yearn for it would be great if they got the right director and the right actors and all that. But like I say, you get Tommy Lee Jones as Bob the Nailer, older guy.
Hmm.
Um, it had such a great plot and everything, but they just didn't, like I say, they didn't follow any of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope all those guys made a good check. I hope they all got a good killer check for, their
Maybe.
I hope
Maybe.
so.
That's
I hope they
that's part of the problem with it. You don't know. Some people get seven-figure deals and other, movie adaptions, and other people get, a pat on the shoulder and says, "Hey, we're going to turn your book into something," and they
yeah,
don't, they don't get life-altering money.
yeah.
So I know it comes in both forms, basically. Yeah, it's interesting. I know authors that won't sell their rights because it's not enough money, and they know that Hollywood can, take their alpha male character and they can turn into a woman. They can completely,
Yeah,
because they'll have full creative control to completely take your story and leave very little of it left on the
yeah,
screen.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
I could understand that. Unless they were to give you, FU money, I can see saying no thanks, If it's life
or
altering,
have some creative control, even if you don't get
or
the
some creative control, yeah. But I
control.
mean, especially in today's world, yeah, they're gonna switch it to a trans male swimmer who is going to be in that spot as the the killer or the woman or whatever, and ruin your movie and ruin your reputation, and
Yeah, you got to keep
because
writing books about these people, or you normally would. So, and people, take that. They definitely take the movie adaptation because so many people don't read that. People that
yeah,
will watch the movie and be like, "Oh, like, there's a book about this too." Oh, look, the book is nothing like this movie.
yeah. No, and most people are not aware that the movie they're watching comes from a book. But I am always it's so rare that that a movie made from a book is any good.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
is rare.
like that recent Shogun, that was quite good.
I didn't see
And
it.
that's good. That was very good. So
Okay,
that new it was on FX. It
okay.
was 10. Now, have you read Shogun?
I have not, no.
So Shogun's a big book. It's the problem with Shogun is it's got to be done over it, and they did it in 10 parts.
Okay.
So in the 70s they did a made for TV one, which was 3 parts. And actually, considering it was made for TV in the 70s, it wasn't half bad.
Hmm.
But to truly do Shogun, you need that much. And they did a 10 part of it, and it's good. It was very good. There's only been a few times where the book the movie, lives up to the book.
Yeah.
Rarely, once in a great while, it even surpasses it. But for the most part,
Yeah, it's hard.
one flew over the cuckoo's nest. That was a really good, obviously made for, taken from the book. That was pretty
Mhm.
spot on. I read the book after the movie, and it was right on the money. And I think all the casting was perfect, that
Right.
kind of thing. But it's a needle in a haystack. Well, Game of Thrones, I mean, until it went bad.
Right.
Most Game of Thrones readers were very happy with the series until they ran out of material and it went down the toilet. That last season was bad.
He still owes one more book, doesn't he, to finish it? Is it or one?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they can't really finish it unless they unless they come up with some money
Well,
to
yeah, but I think he's got
resurrect.
another book out before. I thought he was going to do another book. I met him. I did security at Thriller Fest several years, and one of the years, George was the guest of honor or whatever, and so we had to like that was weird. We had to walk him around, and I was he was doing a signing at one point in one of the hallways, and they told me, okay, you stand by the table and don't let anyone go back behind him. And I'm like, okay, can I have some context why? And they're like, well, he's afraid or he's concerned that people will try, and they've done this before. People go behind him with scissors and they'll cut a lock of his hair off.
Oh,
And I'm just like, wait, what? I'm like, it's
do
like,
I need to and do I need to be armed, or do I need a bulletproof vest, or
yeah.
what?
I was the
Like a
lead stopper. There was no armament. Just
yeah.
stand in front of the bullet, basically. Yeah, they give you no
Jeez.
nothing. But
Well, that can't the poor guy. Yeah, that's kind of creepy. I mean, I would want someone behind me too if I can't relax and not worry I'm going to hear somebody go snip, run off.
oh, I was just like, man, and it made me think though, because he's one of the exceptions to the rule. Because I was telling my kids about this recently, and um, most even well-known authors could walk by almost every American in any
Yeah,
setting.
you wouldn't know who they were. Yeah.
Nobody would know. James Patterson makes millions every year in all the novels
Mm.
that come out under his name and all the other stuff. James
Yeah.
can Jim can go almost anywhere, probably in the country. And would he get recognized? Sure, he'll get recognized in certain circles, but he could go through a lot of parts of the country and no one have a clue who he was. It's not
Yeah.
George Clooney walking
Stephen
down the street
Stephen King gets recognized because he's so weird looking.
because he's so
You
right.
can't mistake him. I mean, he's going to get recognized, but that's only because he just looks like Stephen King. It's
Yeah, exactly.
impossible to miss Stephen King. That
Um,
would be it.
yeah, there's very few, and I guess that's a good thing about the successful writers that make it and make a lot of money doing it is you still can keep a lot of your notoriety where
Yeah,
people don't
yeah, yeah.
really, again, you're not George
Which
Clooney,
would,
you're not Britney
yeah,
Spears
no,
or Taylor
yeah,
Swift.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's probably the best of both worlds, really.
yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
if you and maybe there's some places you can go where you get, I get well, not in much anymore. I mean, I got recognized for my occasionally for my stuff on the magazines when I used to write all the magazines. I'd go into a gym, usually a gym, of course,
Yeah.
but I got recognized in Panama a couple times.
Wow.
Surprised the hell out of me. But
Mhm.
they're a small country. They read magazines and they still read the old magazine stuff. I
Mhm.
was really surprised. Went into the couple of gyms, but I got used to get occasionally recognized, usually at a gym, but not always. Once in
Will
a while.
Brink,
So
the international superstar in Panama.
yeah.
So
But I was really surprised when I got recognized in Panama, probably two or
yeah,
three times over 10 years.
right.
But I thought that was fun. But I could see no doubt there's a balance there where it's fun and then it's not fun anymore. And
Yeah.
then you can't go anywhere. I mean, people kind of cut a piece of your hair off. That would really annoy me.
Yeah.
If I had to have security to watch my back like that, I wouldn't make me happy.
In one of the panels for George for one of the panels he gave, he was talking, they were talking, he got getting questions on what it was like, and they asked him what he thought about fame and fortune. And he said, fortune is great. He's like, it's wonderful when they pull a dump truck up to your driveway and dump cash under your drive, figuratively, dump cash in your
Mm-hmm.
driveway. He's like, the fame's horrible. And he's one of those people like Stephen King, like you mentioned. George is
Yeah,
very
he's definitely a recognizable guy. Yeah.
yeah, he's recognizable for an author. And so, he said, back in the 70s and 80s, he could walk around New York City and no one knew, clue who he was. He can't do that anymore. Now, he
Right.
doesn't necessarily maybe have to have security always, but he's going to get hounded if he
Yeah.
goes
Well,
most
the success of the show obviously put
absolutely.
him over the top. And I mean, he also has a lot of fans that are really mad at him too. They were really mad about how that show ended and that he didn't come up with another book. I would not be surprised if he hasn't had a few people actually, say nasty things to him about
Oh,
how he should have come up
I'm
with
sure
that
he's had
last
some
book.
death threats, probably, because
I
that's
wouldn't be
how
surprised.
crazy
People were
people are.
very emotional. People get very emotional about their shows, and he was supposedly, he ran out of more or less content. And he didn't have a book coming, so they wrote their own ending or their own last season for it. And I think people were very upset. I was not enough to send them a nasty note, but I must say, I mean, 7 seasons of investment in the best, probably one of the best shows that ever was,
Right.
without a doubt. And then to have that last season so badly written and so clunky.
Yeah.
Oh man, there was even like a talk, like a GoFundMe where fans would
Right.
fund changing, actually refilming that last season.
Yep. No, absolutely. I
You
saw
know,
the first six, and then before seven came out, I think I was like, I was pilfering off my sister's HBO account or something because whatever, I think that was during separation time, or I can't remember now how many years back it was, but whatever happened is she either changed her password or got rid of HBO, and I didn't
right?
get to see the last season. And everyone said, "You're not missing anything. You'd be
No,
pissed."
you're not. And it didn't, and there really wasn't, it wasn't like any real, like there wasn't like any closure, like closure the way you'd want to. You would have been, you're better off leaving on a high, not knowing how it ended
Right.
than than knowing how it ended because the ending was so awful and so badly done and stuff that your mouth was left open. Like,
Yep.
how could you, I've spent all this time building up to this and you
It's built
guys,
right.
fuck this up. So no, you didn't miss anything.
So talk about the
Hmm.
ending and leaving on a high. We're going to get to the last question. So my last
Yep.
question is a little on the deeper side. But obviously you're a writer. You've written all types of stuff, magazines, books, novellas. You've kind of run the gamut here. But as a writer, I think you might agree that we all going to have a first page, or life's like a book. We're going to have a first page and we're going to have a last page. We don't know how
Hmm.
many pages are going to go between that. But as a writer, you get to write. If you have the ability to write your own page, which I'm giving you, congratulations.
Hmm.
What does that last page say for Will Brink?
The last page of my existence.
of the book of your life,
Is this
yes.
the book of my life? It's a good question. Well, slightly changed, but they say that you should write your own obituary.
I
Uh,
absolutely know about that. Yes. Hmm.
It's a good question. I'm trying to think of a
A
way to
witty
approach such a
response.
thing. Yeah, like yeah, witty response. I'm
There's
usually
no
pretty
wrong response, first of
all about
all.
these things,
So
but you know, I don't. It's funny. I don't have, and as almost 60. I'll be 60 at the end of this month. Um, I don't have any flowery, large scale things to say. That I like. I don't mind if it comes across that I led a simple, honest life that in the end people liked me, kind of thing. I don't want to be known as I've lost the necessary the drive to see success as making a lot of money or
mhm.
or that type of thing. I don't. I'm always I've got what I need and how roof over my head and electricity and food and friends. A lot of those things I would have thought were important that I would normally have written maybe 20 years ago, a
Mhm.
flowery something or another, you know, doesn't really care anymore. I just want to leave a good memory, to the people that are still around and be
Mhm.
okay with the fact that, you know, if you look at people in history, what all they've really tried to do, people that have Julius Caesar, Hitler, whatever, all these people are trying to achieve is the not being forgotten. That's really all they want. They want to not be forgotten because everybody, this is our fear. When I'm gone, will I be forgotten? Well, yeah, you will be. And it don't
Everybody.
matter who you are, you're still going to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And that's all these. You think you look at the amount of damage and destruction and things that go on by basically people that they're underneath the hood. All they're really just don't want to be forgotten.
Yep.
And I think that I've come to the conclusion that my time and also this brings me. There's some science fiction stuff going on, sort of in the back of my head here, stuff because I'm also like I'm very interested in like near death experiences,
Hmm.
life, consciousness after death. That's something I have read a lot about. I've read books. I've watched a lot of videos. I've spoken to people. I'm always interested in the nature of consciousness, whether there we don't even know if the brain is consciousness or is the brain just like a conduit or antenna
Hmm.
for consciousness. We don't even know that. So
Right.
that this to me sort of opens up more doors as to what does that mean? Am I transmutating to another state of consciousness
Right.
or and then leaving people here? So yeah, I don't have I wish I had a good answer for this one. I don't think I have a great definitive answer where I could just say it declaratively,
You've summed up some
type
good
of thing.
things though, and again, there's no, and you're put on the spot too, but yeah, there's.
Yeah, yeah, on the spot. Yeah, I mean, I always want, I like to say, I would normally like to say something witty and funny and silly, like, he wrote some pretty good books. He was a good guy and, type of thing. But I don't know, doesn't seem fitting at this point. There's a great tombstone in LA. Guy was an actor a million years ago, and on his tombstone it says, "I told you I wasn't feeling well."
I've heard. Who was it? I've heard about that. I'm trying to remember who it was.
Yeah, he's a pretty well-known comedian. He was an
Oh,
way back, like vaudeville
yeah,
type comedian. I love that kind of stuff. That's the way you want to go out like that. That's going to give somebody a chuckle forever and ever.
yeah,
That type of thing.
yeah. Come up with
But
a witty gravestone's a
I
good
don't
one.
have a great answer for it because I'm not even sure what the ending is these days. What happens. As
Right.
far as what's the last page? Is the last page, is it the last page here? And I'm not particularly religious, but I'm very open-minded to
Hmm.
the possibility that consciousness is what we would call non-local.
Right.
It being local would be in your brain. Non-local is maybe it's more of a field that
Yeah.
exists that your brain is a conduit to, kind of thing. There's some fairly interesting um, research and very high level people looking at that type of stuff. And that sort of stuff
Right.
I'm always looking at, you know. Another area is I'm always very interested in aliens, any sort of
Mhm.
UFO alien thing. And you see, there's a lot going on with that these days. I mean, now it's being taken seriously.
Yeah,
It's no
exactly.
longer a fringe topic. The
Right.
halls of Congress are having whole things. Which
Talk
I
about
didn't
it.
think I would ever live long enough, honestly, to see that.
Just, yeah. And
And
yet
they
they
and they
still won't release all the JFK documents.
no, they won't.
Wonder why.
No, yeah, there might be some intertwine going on there too.
The aliens were
Yeah.
working with the CIA when it all comes down to.
Well, yeah, or I mean, there's rumors that JFK was going to expose, we're going to open up the books on that one, and
Yeah.
they took him out. The CIA took him out more or less to hide that.
It's one of those things that you could spend probably your life, but it's fascinating all the information out there. And that's actually where I took the when I was coming up with the idea for the body man and the concept, I'm like, well, where would it have started? Why would they have come up with this role? Why would they have created it? And my brain went back to, well, who was the first modern day television centric president who was, changed everything? Well, it really was JFK. And
Yeah,
whether Marilyn was really being snuck into the White House and all the other, salacious rumors that are out there, if there was any grain of truth, you'd want someone in the White House to try to keep all that quiet, to keep it not coming out.
yeah.
Thank you, JFK, for at least giving me some ideas for books. So
All right, that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to think on that one and get back to you next time
Yeah,
we
no,
next time we
absolutely.
talk. We'll have to we'll
Absolutely.
have to go down the rabbit hole on that one.
There we go. Well, I believe I was always asked people where should uh, people that are listening or watching this, where should they go to find out more information? I think for you, it is your website, Brink Zone, correct?
Yeah, generally, as far as health and fitness and my products and all that, brinkzone.com.
Okay.
And if they were interested more in my fiction, science fiction, fantasy stuff, plus there's some health stuff, the Amazon, just type in Will Brink. That's where all my stuff is. But yeah,
Perfect.
Brinkzone is kind of my main hub of a little bit of everything.
Okay. Well, Will, thank you for coming on. I appreciate the interesting discussions, and you take care.
Yeah, well, let me know what's up and I'll let all my people know too.
Will do. I'll let you know. Thanks,
Thanks.
Will.
Thanks, man.